Ladies and gentlemen, DB&A Television is proud to bring you a Roar Media production, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. If you do not know him, you better Google him. He was a high school Hall of Famer, school record holder, 10-time letter winner. He was just a boy with a ball and a young man with visions of greatness from the land of Hoosiers. When his playing days were over, he wanted to give back to the game that provided him purpose. He had found his passion on the hardwood. 14 years college coaching, multiple regional and conference championships, multiple national rank programs, coached the National Player of the Year. Winning followed him to 15 seasons professional coaching, multiple championships, multiple Coach of the Year honors, near 780 win percentage. He placed over 100 players to their respected national teams that represented their countries at the World Championships and Olympic Games. He has coached current and former NBA stars. His purpose is now to serve, empower, inspire. Here he is, host of the Coach Scott Field Show. Make some noise, show some love. Host Scott Field.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you're watching us from around the globe, I say thank you for allowing us into your homes and most importantly, your hearts. I am grateful. If you're watching us on DB&A TV, on Roku and Amazon Fire, I say thank you so much for the support. If you're watching this or listening to us in podcast form, I say turn that knob up and let us put that flavor in your ear. If you're on Facebook Live with us today, let's use the hashtag Super Agent Comeback. And don't forget to like, send comments, send questions, but most importantly, let's make sure we share this content to empower others. Appreciate your viewership. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to lace them up once again with the coach, Coach Scott Field Show. Our guest today is phenomenal. I am thrilled, honored, and humbled to have Mr. Leigh Steinberg here with us. And if you're asking for this younger generation who may not know, let me be your Google for you. Author of 2 bestsellers. And matter of fact, I have one of those here with me, Leigh. I have your Winning with Integrity is an outstanding book. And he also authored The Agent, known as one of the 6th most powerful people in the NFL. He's negotiated over $4 billion in contracts, 8 #1 NFL draft picks, 64 first-round draft picks, and here's what I love, Leigh, more than $750 million given back to charitable organizations. I love that service. He's the inspiration to the movie Jerry McGuire. He's consulted on the movies Any Given Sunday with Jamie Foxx and Al Pacino, and Love of the Game with Kevin Costner. I also love, and I need to say, he's the father to John, Matt, and Katie. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited because I feel like our values align and the service to others. It just means a lot that Mr. Leigh Steinberg is with us here today. Leigh, welcome to the Coach Scott Field Show. Thank you so much for being here, buddy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Gosh, I can't wait to dive right into this. I've been looking forward to this for over a year. I'm a huge fan from afar and have just enjoyed your journey, love all of the social media content that you provide. You're an inspiration, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And so thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Leigh, let's get into it. 2017, and I got to share this too, because I'm not one of these guys. Look at this. I've got a Patrick Mahomes jersey sitting right here with me, and I only own 2 jerseys, and I'm a former professional basketball coach, so I don't do a lot of that, but that young man is special. You've got, he's a winner, isn't he?
He is special. If you like him on the field, you'll love him even more off the field because he's grounded, great values, cares about other people, and has a charitable and giving heart.
See, that's the best news of all, to hear those things. So 2017, Patrick Mahomes, he's drafted number 10 in the draft. And when you think about it, Mitch Trubisky was number 2. When did you know that all those people, the 10 people before him, got it wrong? When did you know?
I think it was pretty clear that had some freakish skills. Also, that he had the right temperament. What happened was he was playing at Texas Tech, and their defense was so porous that he would have to score 50-point score essentially on every drive. So he got stereotyped as a gunslinger. And the reality of the situation is he translated very well to the NFL. And so it was the projection, and certain teams saw it, especially Kansas City, and traded up to get him. But again, there were people who didn't know if he could adapt to a 3-5-7 step drop, take the ball under center, and play in a pro set game. And the results are what you've seen.
And Leigh, you're a guy who pays attention to detail. You surround yourself and you're so organized and you cover every angle. And so you've got to be sitting there at the table when these draft picks are going on. What's that conversation like with Patrick Mahomes as the draft is going on, knowing how special he is? Take us to that conversation with Patrick.
Well, first of all, Chris Cabot, my younger lawyer, who's now CEO, kept in touch with Kansas City and a lot of other teams. So we had excellent intel. But it was pretty clear that Kansas City was going to do whatever it took to trade up in position, and that the teams sitting after number 10 were teams that were all prepared to take him. So we had prepared him. Draft time is not real time. It's water torture time. Every second seemed like a minute. Every minute seemed like an hour. Drip, drip, drip. So even though he had been prepared, it still had to actually happen. It had to occur. And so he was surrounded by a large number of family members, a large number of folks. When you watch the draft, you see 2 or 3 people sitting at a table, but that's just because they don't want to show spreader events. That room is packed. So the tension ratchets up, and then all of a sudden it's this euphoria when the pick comes, and it's my favorite day of the year.
Oh, it's got to be. And it's so gratifying. I can imagine being in your seat with all the preparation and all the workouts and all of the mock interviews. And I mean, talk about some of those details that you go through once you've identified and have signed an individual and he's going to be a high first rounder. Kind of take the viewers through that process.
So we have an elaborate scouting system in all sports, but in football, it's become totally elaborate. And you have the film that the best predictor of future performance is past performance. So you have game film, which will be a little different this year because there were players who opted out, and there were leagues or conferences that just didn't play a lot of games. But you have the game film, and then the players all go to train somewhere to work on 40 time, to work on position-specific drills. So they'll go away for 6 weeks to some training center. And then if the first evaluation point is all-star games, but only seniors can play in them. So that's the first preparation point. The second is a scouting combine, where they do those 5 tests: how many times you can bench press 225 pounds, how many your vertical leap, a number of other drills. Teams meet for the first time with players one-on-one with their brain trust, and players then perform on the field. So that's an elaborate scouting event. Following that, and we didn't have that this year, following that, you have pro scouting day back on the college campus. And for quarterbacks, that's where they'll throw in a session that can be really definitive for 40, 45 minutes, 60 to 80 throws, everything. And the conceit is that the ball never touches the ground. That's what we're looking for. They're throwing to their own wide receivers. And then teams go fly in players. Again, not this year, not last year, but they fly in players to their franchise. So they have this whole system. So what you're looking to do with the Mahomes is showcase that if you project him for the next 10 to 12 years, that he projects very well and look past just game film, but make a projection.
Yeah, see, and I think there's so many details, and there's so many analytics that's going on. There's people looking at proficiency and, arm levels, because, me being in pro basketball, we have the same types of systems for pre-draft, as you're aware. And it's interesting, the details and the amount of details that, some franchises will go through. And I think it's just a great process for you to be through a lens and a perspective that you have to prepare your clients and have them ready for, any and all and adversities and things as well. So I think it's a great job.
And we did the same thing with basketball draftees. So Greg Anthony, who was a lottery pick for the Knicks, and we had Austin Crozier, who ended up with the Pacers, and Wayne Simeon, who ended up with the Miami Heat. And they did the same thing. You had two groups, one just working on straight training, stamina, flexibility, fluidity. And then you would have a position specific. So someone who'd work with them on their shot, someone who'd work on the 3-point, someone who would work on technique for the tryouts.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Let's get into your journey. Let's shine a light on your career and the things that you've been able to accomplish, because you talk about, and I think this is neat how you've been out there and you've shared your journey and you've shared the highs and the lows, with your personal and professional stuff. I think it's great that you look at, you are at the elite. You got Troy Aikman and Warren Moon, and, things are going well. Bartkowski, a college basically roommate for you, and then then some struggles came along for you, and then you go from that struggle from the valley, and then you get right back to the pinnacle again. Kind of take us through that journey of Leigh Steinberg, peak, then valley, and then peak again.
Well, I started out back in 1975. I was a dorm counselor in undergraduate dorm, and they moved the freshman football team into the dorm. They had other people. They had a little bearded guy named Steve Wozniak, who went down to Apple and formed Apple, and a number of interesting folks. But Bart lived there, and then the draft was in January in 1975. And it really was rudimentary then. There was no organized field of agentry. Teams actually didn't have an obligation to negotiate with a player agent, so they could just hang the phone up. Anyway, Bartkowski's the first pick in the first round of the NFL draft, and we get the biggest contract in NFL history. And we flew back there, and we get to Atlanta, and there are Klieg lights flashing in the sky like for a movie premiere. A huge crowd was pressed up against the police line, and we interrupt the Johnny Carson show to bring you a special news bulletin. Steve Bartkowski and his attorney have just arrived at the Atlanta airport. So I saw the idol worship and veneration that athletes were held in. Well, Scott, my dad raised us outside of spiritual considerations with two core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was to try to make a meaningful difference in other people's lives and help people who couldn't help themselves. So I was looking for a craft, and I saw that the athletes could go back and retrace their roots to the high school community, where over 100 of them set up scholarship funds or work with the church or Boys and Girls Club. At the collegiate levels, so Troy Aikman endowed a full scholarship back at UCLA, or Warren Moon at the University of Washington, or Edgerrin James at Miami. And then at the pro level, a charitable foundation. And So we would get the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders to sit on the board. So that would be work done, the former running back, putting the 175th single mother and their family into the first home they'll ever own. And it's athletes messaging and changing lives. So when I did the boxer Lennox Lewis, it was, we had him cut a public service announcement that said, real men don't hit women. And that could do more to trigger behavioral changes in rebellious adolescents than 1,000 authority figures. So that practice built over time. As you said, we ended up with 64 first-round draft picks, the very first pick in the first round, 8 years. There were weekends, half the starting quarterbacks. I have 12 players that are now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. A really big baseball practice, a big basketball practice, got involved with saving the San Francisco Giants when they were going to move to Tampa Bay, and then the Leighs and the Rams. And the practice built over time. I got to a point where there were a series of reverses in my life in the early 2000s, and they were, my two kids were diagnosed with an eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa. My father died a long death of cancer. We lost a home in a beach city, Newport Beach, to mold infestation. And it just, it felt like, what's next? God's plagues to Egypt, you know, is it going to be a locust or a river of blood or whatever? And I turned to the wrong thing. I turned to alcohol. And I got to the point where I had totally closed my office, closed my condo, was back at my parents' house, and I had a moment of clarity, an epiphany, where I realized I wasn't a starving peasant in Darfur. I wasn't living in Nazi Germany with the last name Steinberg. I didn't have illness. What excuse did I have not to be a good parent and to help people in the world? So I went into sober living and worked a 12-step program. If there's anybody out there who's struggling, who's got all sorts of confusion and depression, there's help available and you can find it. So a couple of weeks ago, I celebrated my 11th continuously sober birthday. And so
congratulations.
Thank you. So we're up into year 12. And then some really good friends in Houston financed a restart. And we had Paxton Lynch back in, it was a first round draft pick, which back in 2016, and Mahomes in 2017, and Tua Tagovailoa last year. And, but my real comeback was being a good father and still trying to do the same programs to again, enhance people's lives and bring healing to people who were hopeless.
Wow. And I think it's empowering and it's inspiring and so vulnerable of you to be able to share that journey. But take us, when did you know you were at your lowest? When was the bottom for Leigh Steinberg? And what was that euphoric moment you mentioned that you're like, okay, I need to make a change?
You know, I had moved into my parents' house, and I'm 61 years old, and I'm not certified to represent athletes, and moving into sober living, you know, was a humbling experience. Not that I ever felt like I was arrogant, but you have to break denial to deal with any addiction. So I did that, and I would say that the great days are watching Tua Tagovailoa repay his scholarship to his high school, or set up a a charitable foundation, or 15 in the Mahomes. It's watching athletes touch lives and then doing my own programs to fight racism and bullying and sex trafficking, domestic violence, and
Wow.
climate change, and trying to make a difference. And now we're running education programs for young people that want to break into sports in a professional way. So we do sports career conferences where for an hour you get to listen to people in media, and for an hour you listen to people who work for a team, a league, a conference, an athletic department. And we do marketing and branding and charity and entrepreneurship. And then we have an agent academy, which is actually coming up next week. And it's for people that want to be an agent. We've done them all across the country. This will be virtual, but just go to steinbergsports.com and you can sign up and jumpstart your career. And we'll show you how to negotiate and do a salary cap, and how to recruit and how to negotiate, and every skill set you need.
Yeah, Leigh, I think it's great that you are being so proactive and providing these services, and you're providing opportunities for these next generations of who's the next Leigh Steinberg going to be. And, the sports business, certification, you mentioned your agent, Academy 2.0, I think is phenomenal. I also did some research and reading, and I saw where you're also doing work with like concussions. Kind of tell me where that comes from, Leigh. I mean, was it seeing Troy Aikman, take several shots? I mean, kind of what was the inspiration to start to kind of challenge the NFL to go further into their concussion protocols?
So it's the late 80s, and I've got clients like Troy Aikman and Steve Young who are getting hit in the head. And we would go to doctors and ask how many is too many and what are the long-term effects, and they didn't have answers. So I had a crisis of conscience in that if you really care for an athlete, you care for them after their career is over, and you care for the long-term health. And that's abstraction to most athletes. They're in denial. So they're athletes who from Pop Warner on have been taught to ignore pain and to suck it up. And in addition, they're young people for whom long-term health is an abstraction. So I started holding concussion conferences, and one was in '94, and there was Troy Aikman and Steve Young and Warren Moon and Drew Bledsoe and Gary, a whole series of players. And we had neurologists talk about what the effects were and what they knew. Well, the brain's the last frontier of medical research. So this is, we knew everything about every joint in the body, but very little about the brain. And in these last 30 years, it's become much clearer. And I held one in Los Angeles with the Concussion Institute. And there they finally have the studies that 3 or more concussions occasion an exponentially higher rate of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, premature senility, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and depression. So I called it a ticking time bomb and a public health epidemic, and have tried to raise awareness and then look for modalities that could prevent or cure an actual concussion. So it's the helmet that currently just protects against skull fracture. It's taking blocking and tackling out of the game, except for games, not even doing it in training camp. It's hyperbaric oxygen. It's biofeedback, and trying to explore ways to actually make an impact on this. It's not simply a football issue. It's young girls in AYSO soccer. It's people that play hockey and field hockey, and it's also relevant for people who fall off horses or bikes or motorcycles. And so this is a big challenge. And the military suffers exactly the same thing. They're a very close parallel to a young athletic to an athletic environment. They're band of brothers and the rest of it. So we can try to bring more healing to this area so that we don't have people that at 50 years of age reach over to pick up their kids. It's one thing because of the injuries that you suffered to have aches and pains picking up your child when you're 50 from being an athlete. It's another thing not to be able to recognize that child. So
Yeah.
with the brain.
See, and I mean, people can talk about, the billions of dollars of contracts negotiation, but when I hear something like that, where you're truly taking care of the individual that you're serving, I think is powerful. And I think more awareness needs to be brought to that, because most people didn't even really think of CTE or any type of traumatic brain injuries from contact sports until Will Smith's movie came out, which kind of brought some awareness to the common fan, but yet they still didn't take it to another level. And to know that you're doing that in a service, I think is great. And then I also read somewhere where you were working with sports arenas. Kind of share with us what you're doing with franchise owners for those sports arenas.
Well, so our business has expanded. Part of it has always been the representation of athletes. Part of it has been creating new, interesting projects that bring fans closer to sports. So back in the 1990s, I created a company called Athlete Direct. And it was the first time, because it was still AOL, you've got mail, to get up onto the internet. We signed Michael Jordan, Ken Griffey Jr., and a number of the quarterbacks, and they did chats and weekly discussions on their charitable foundations and e-commerce applications. So we've one of the concepts with Stadium and Arena was, could we do a sporting green upgrade to those venues, to practice fields, stadium, and arena, that would drop carbon emissions and energy costs and recycling, resurfacing water, solar, be able to implement a green footprint, and then to translate that into a teaching platform. So millions of fans that go to the stadium see a waterless urinal or solar panel and think about how to integrate that into their own lives or homes. I've designed an app and to deal with young Generation Z or millennials, whatever you want to call them, who grow up with big screen television and cutting, and they're tweeting and TikToking and Snapchatting and Instagramming, and so attention span gets attenuated, right? So to keep a fan in the stands for 3.5 hours that might have 28 minutes of actual action. So imagine if you held a phone in your hand, and down one side would run your fantasy stats, and down the other side would run your gambling bets. And underneath it, you could text and talk smack to people in or out of the stadium. We allow the fans to vote on one play call a game that the coach had to call. And we allow them to do one referee overturn that they can vote on, where that bad call goes away. And you can order from the snack bar, and you get an unrelenting diet of other games, content, puzzles, quizzes, games, and all of it monetized. And so that's where we're at. We have a new project for Mahomes that is a VR, virtual reality. So you walk into a stadium, you put the headset on, and all of a sudden you're in Arrowhead Stadium, and you're listening to crowd noise, and you're looking at these behemoth athletes running towards you. Predicated on what you do with the football you hold in your hand, you either throw an interception or touchdown pass. So it's all methods to bring fans closer in experience. And our field has just blown up with fantasy sports and naming rights on stadia. And If Rip Van Winkle had gone to sleep in 1975 and when we started and woke up today and saw social media and the rest of it, he'd be in complete culture shock. He might go back to sleep.
I love that analogy with Rip Van Winkle. And I just think about, as you're describing that, to have that interaction, that live interaction and that connectivity with the sport as just another source of entertainment while the main product is going on. I think it's wonderful foresight, and it's inspiring to hear those types of things that are going on. And I love that, Leigh. This is just fascinating to me, all the things that you're involved in. And as you mentioned before, you've done a lot of contracts, you've got phenomenal players. And to think that $700 million has gone back into charitable contributions. Was that mainly that motivation from that voice from your father on how you were raised with your values? Is that where that comes from?
Well, it was that, and then going to Berkeley and being a student body president reinforced it. When I was student body president, Ronald Reagan was governor, and so and every time we protested, he cracked down. So I learned everything I needed to know about negotiation from interacting with Governor Reagan. Later on, he had me back at the White House and gave me a proclamation, but we weren't laughing in the 60s.
Yeah, right. My goodness, that's powerful. Talk about, you've got Tua Tagovailoa, and here's a man who almost mirrors your career path. I mean, he's at the height of everything. Alabama national championship, comes in, wins the national championship. The next year he's playing and he gets injured and has the surgery. You as the agent, how are you preparing Tua Tagovailoa for that journey and for him to be ready, to be draft ready for, was it 2020 or?
So the whole question with Tua, he obviously did everything you could ever do to be an elite quarterback at Alabama, but now all of a sudden he's hurt. Yep. And the problem is information flows quickly, and there starts to be some sentiment that he might have to slow play his career, he might not be healthy and the rest of it, but that's not what the doctors are telling us. So the key is to allow him to heal. And then last year scouting was different, and Chris Cabot went back and they had the equivalent of a pro scouting day that our firm just ran, and it was then sent to all the teams, and all of a sudden you're looking at a healthy Tua, and it's before the draft. So that was his only issue. He's going to be a splendid quarterback, and but would he be healthy? And so doctors' reports were critical. Having that tape showing him all bouncy and lively was critical. And as a result, he went right in the draft where he should have gone, and went to a really good place in Miami.
Yeah, and to think, because it is a business without a doubt, and you think of millions of dollars for each draft pick that goes by, but to get in front of and be prepared and be able to help assist change that narrative to how other people's value and view him, I think is an incredible job, because it took a lot of due diligence on your guys' end to make sure you could lead, guide, and direct him and showcase him in a way that shows a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. Am I correct?
Yes. And the key in representation is always listening skills.
Oh.
Can sit with another person and create enough trust that you can understand their deepest anxieties and fears and their greatest hopes and dreams, and bond with them on a deeper level. Not what other people should consider important, but what that athlete considers important. And with Tua, you've got someone who's really family oriented, has a real relationship with Hawaii, is young man of heavy faith. And so, but you need to draw that out of them. So you ask an athlete, how important is short-term economic gain, money you get quickly? How important is long-term economic security? What about family considerations? What about geography? How important is it to you to be in certain weather or size of city or whatever? How important is profile, making a difference in the world? How important are endorsements? And then, of course, you've got in every sport, how important is being a starter, being on a winning team, the quality of coaching, the system that team uses, the facilities they have. So you want to sort of encompass that constellation of values and understand deeply what's going to fulfill that athlete. So if I can help fulfill their hopes and dreams, and that involves second career too, it involves from the very start telling a athlete what other skills do you have besides athletic ones. So it enables a Desmond Howard to go on and be the host of College Game Day, or a Steve Young to run a hedge fund, or Bruce Smith, the retired Buffalo Bills, to run a construction company and to be a part of owning a big hotel in Washington, D.C., or Duron Cherry being the Anheuser-Busch distributor in Kansas City. It careful preparation so that when the first career comes to an end, that second one is just as fulfilling.
Yeah, see, and what I like about that, Leigh, and what I hear, you're helping them build a bridge out of poverty, because a lot of athletes, their social demographic and their background, where they're just trying to survive by the day. And maybe when you're asking them these questions, that may be the first time that anybody's ever thought, oh my goodness, I've trained so hard on this skill set so I can be the best that I can be as an athlete. They probably never even thought, 3 years after career. And to have that foresight and to give them that vision and give them, a springboard, I think is a powerful tool in today's society, without a doubt.
So we try to help athletes focus on networking. And that's going to a banquet, talking to someone for 5 minutes, establishing a connection, getting their card, and putting together a Rolodex. Because every professional athlete is surrounded by business people, political people, entertainment figures, and everything else. And if they can start to make relationships based on who they are as a human being, then it's going to be a smooth journey to second career. And the part of it is the charitable outreach, because teaching athletes to not be self-absorbed, but to look outward and see themselves as an active actor in life.
Yeah, and to be that service for others, I think, is such a vital piece of success in any walk of life. And I've heard you, mention relationships. And to me, when I think about how blessed I've been in my career and in my journeys, and to formulate the relationships that I've been able to build along the way, to me, those are the things that you can't put a price tag on, but are so, so valuable.
And if you really think about sports, someone who's a successful athlete has all the preparation they need to be successful in another field. They have to postpone current gratification for future success. They have to have incredible work habits. They have to have incredible dedication. They learn how to function in a team concept where they relate with other people. They learn how to take a complex body of information and display it and process it in real time. And they also learn courage and performance under pressure. So take a quarterback, he's throwing a couple interceptions, the crowd is booing, the center's looking at him like he's on hallucinogens to be making these again, the crowd's getting restive, And what does he do now? Can he compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, tune out extraneous input, and elevate his level of play in critical circumstances to take a team to and through victory? Because if you really think about it, a third of athletic contests may be blowouts, but many of them come down to UCLA Gonzaga, where it's the very last quarter or the very last shot. So how you do in that critical time, how we all do in our lives in times of crisis, do we have the ability to be resilient and to come back and to, we're all going to be knocked back in life. But,
Amen.
But can you, after a temporary stunning, come back?
Yeah, see, and that's what we've talked about this entire time, these comebacks. And I hear the service that you provide. I hear the trust that they have in you because of those relationships and you asking and diving in and getting the important questions. But I also hear you providing a support system for these athletes. So that way they know that if things are bad, I mean, you're there for them and you've got their back. But let me ask you this, when Leigh Steinberg was down, who were your support systems? Who did you fall back on and could rely on when you were at your darkest moment?
Friends, family. I don't totally know how people make it who don't have large groups of friends and family, and then people would just come out of the blue, like Charles Barkley called me to wish me well, or Bob McGuire, just owners and general managers, and so that never went away. Although becoming sober is internal, so it really has to do with what's going on. You could be surrounded by, I still go to banquets, and when the pandemic stops, still go to banquets, and I'm surrounded by people drinking. If your proclivity is to drink, you'll find the alcohol somewhere, even if it's not around you. If it's not to drink, then it doesn't really matter. So I had people that stuck by me. I did not make it alone. And I had a unique fellowship and a 12-step program.
Yeah, see, that's wonderful. And thank you for being so bold and vulnerable and sharing that, because there's going to be people out there who have trials and have tribulations and have adversity. And for them to have this skill set to be able to make a healthy, non-toxic decision to help them come back is what's most important. That first step, just take the first step. You don't have to take 12, but just take that first step. Right, Leigh?
You're very inspirational. That is exactly what it is, because there's great support out there. And I was lucky. I was raised by a very optimistic father who believed in the goodness in human nature and mother. And so I'm the person who thinks that if you walk into a barn and there's a bunch of defecation, there must be a pony in there somewhere.
Yeah, the eternal optimist. I think you and I share that same value there. Most people will tell you I have the same outlook. So I admire that, and I think it's also a wonderful skill set. I hear about your detail oriented in your preparation. When Leigh Steinberg has to prepare for a contract renegotiation, who are you most excited to go in and prepare for? Which owner, which general manager that, like, okay, I got to be on my A game because I know he's going to be prepared against us like I need to be prepared against him. Who do you look for those renegotiations with?
Well, what was funny is, having grown up in Los Angeles, I was a Laker fan. So I remember doing a Byron Scott contract with Jerry West.
Okay.
Jerry, I can't negotiate with someone whose poster was over my bed as a kid.
It's your logo.
when I represented my first Dodgers, it was like that had been my first team. In football, you have people like Bob Kraft and Jerry Jones that are terrific, and we did multiple contracts with them. It's I wouldn't say younger, but newer generation who made their money in the rough and tumble free enterprise system. So they come in at these enhanced prices for franchises. And when you deal with an owner, they can just make a decision. What you want to do in preparation, again, is put your heart and mind into the interests of the other person. What kind of signing will reflect well on the team? What kind of signing will fill their needs? What kind of signing will do something for both your client and the other side? Can you get into their head and understand what their true priorities are? And then it's all comparables. It's who is your player like, who is out there playing, who's making X, Y, or Z money? Who is he like in terms of years of experience? Who's he like in terms of statistics?
Wow.
Who's he like in terms of honors? And analogize. Because in many negotiations, there's no arbitrator, there's no third party. It's whose reality is going to prevail. Is it my sense of this player is critical as non-fungible, non-modular, or is it their perception that he's replaceable?
Yeah, see, and Leigh, I've loved this book, Winning with Integrity. And the word integrity jumped out at me because I try to live my life that way with decisions and choices and my family values and things. And you described in one of the chapters about the negotiations against Bob Kraft and how it went on for multiple months because maybe there was a disconnect in communication. Kind of share that without giving the book away, because the book is awesome and people need to go get it. I implore them to go get it because it's a powerful tool. But kind of describe that negotiation with Bob Kraft when he was as a young owner and you were trying to navigate your way and get a good contract for Drew.
So I immediately bonded with Bob Kraft, who was someone that was really involved in charity off the field, had a compassionate heart, and was smart. So when he bought his franchise, he asked advice of everybody he knew. And in the pro sports, he went to other sports, he gathered every bit of information. So there's a whole process in negotiating where one side goes in high and the other side comes in low, and you have to deal with that. So Bob said to me, look, let's not mess around. Give me what you think your lowest or best offer is, and I'll give that to you. And there'll be a meeting of the minds, and I won't try to lowball you in the rest of it. So we went off and we did that, and we got together. And when we did, both of us were acting in good faith, except our offers were really different. He was offering much less money and I was asking for much more money, and it wasn't reconcilable. And at that point, he felt offended because what you're trying to do is create a paradigm of cooperation between two people where you're acting in good faith. And we both were, but our figures were totally different. So we split off and time started passing. Well, when time passes in a sports negotiation, it's not particularly positive because
especially with social media today.
our players have a fine. Well, you know what I learned early, Scott, was to never negotiate publicly, because if you put Jerry Jones up against the wall publicly and challenge him, it's not like he's going to start taking a bag lunch to work or take the bus. His life's going to go on. He can get stubborn and lock in. And what you're looking to do is avoid confrontation. You're looking to not have deadlock. because when you think things can't get worse, let me assure you that they can't. Even though you may feel stuck, worse consequences can happen. So Bob and I needed to get back together, which we did. I flew back to Boston and we went out to an Italian restaurant. And we found that we had a natural affinity for each other. And, he's a great owner. I mean, what that team's done, it just goes against history.
Wow.
To be that well, I mean, they have drafts, they have free agency, they have salary caps, they have all these things designed to create parity. But don't you know, good organizations with great owners, great front office, and great coaching win, and the players go round and round. And people that don't have it together don't win. And so they stay the top forever. But anyway, I recall that we went back to his home. He had a second home in Cape Cod, and we're sitting in the hot tub. And on ESPN, they had a list of deals I'd done. That was the year with we had the first pick in the draft, who was Kajana Carter, and the fifth, who was Kerry Collins, and then Cordell Stewart in the second round. And anyway, they listed all the deals.
Yeah.
And the announcer said, "Leigh, time to take a vacation." And I cracked up because we were, sitting in his hot tub.
Oh, see, I think that's neat. Well, so many fascinating stories and so many inspirational journeys to draw from. I just think of so many things that, gosh, I'd love to just sit there, because as I listen to you, it's helping me evolve and grow and be a better version of myself. And I try to treat every day like it's game 7. I mean, you got to bring it, and you got to be prepared, and you got to, provide service for others. And I feel like that's exactly what this show is doing, and what we're doing today for our viewers. And Leigh, this has been phenomenal. I just really, really enjoying it. I know we've got a little less than 10 minutes here. When you're sitting with an individual that you're wanting to recruit and be a representative of, is it more important to you the values? Is it the character? Is it the loyalty? What is it, those intangibles that you're looking for out of an athlete that you're going to represent, or an individual, or a broadcaster, or anything?
Well, first of all, you're looking for a good heart, a compassionate person who has a sense of social conscience and cares about other people. Because
Like that.
every time one would represent someone, it's cutting up a little bit of your own life to share with someone. And I only want to do that for people I share the same value.
I like that.
Is money important? Yes, money is important. Is it the only value in life? No. Is family more important? Yes. Is making a difference more important? Yes. So let's just make sure we're on the same page. So I'll research the athlete to try to figure out. I'll watch an interview he did. If I found out he took a trip to Haiti, or he went to the inner city, I know that's my type of guy. Then you're looking for a incredible work ethic. And we always say, stay in process. Stop thinking about ultimate results. Just keep doing the training, keep doing the discipline, keep doing the practice that will get
your reps
where you are going. So it's stay in process. So you're looking for that, and a hunger to be great, a hunger to make a impact in the world. So normally it's the parents I'll talk to first, because they're the screeners for the negotiations. And so you're talking to Tua Tagovailoa's Tagovailoa's parents, and you're talking to Patrick Mahomes' parents. And so that's the first thing. But normally they're the screeners, but they have a fair sense for what they're looking for.
Yeah, see, and I think that's neat to reach out and do research and, find out more about the individual, because to me, that's what it's all about. And those are guys that you don't mind going to war with, or someone that you want in your corner with you. And Leigh, I think it's wonderful. Leigh Steinberg now, what, 72 years old? What would be the message a 72-year-old Leigh Steinberg would have for a 30-year-old Leigh Steinberg?
To find something that you're passionate about in life, to hone your listening skills, to not fall for situational ethics. So situational ethics are where someone is nice to cats and dogs, a good neighbor, nice to his kids, but then goes out in the workplace and divorces their basic ethics. Because after all, it's social Darwin business, and the end justifies the means. That leads to a type of soul death. And I think it's really important that people live out their values. So find work to do that you believe in, and find ways to use your life to help other people.
Yeah, see, I like that a lot. You know, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes here. Any last things or nuggets that you want to share with the viewers today? Because to me, this has been just phenomenal. And I'm so gracious and grateful for your servant heart, your servant leadership, your time today. But what nuggets would you last like to leave the viewers with?
Well, I think it's understanding that we all can make a positive difference in the world. You can do it through spiritual belief. You can do it through parenting well. You can do it in your own life. My dad used to look at me and he'd say, when you're looking for someone to make a change or correct a situation that's wrong, and you wait because you think older people will take care of it or political figures will take care of it, he would say, you could wait forever. The they that should fix something in life is you. So people can adopt that philosophy in their own time, in their own way. Parenting children well is a real contribution, probably our most sacred contribution to make. It's just trying to have a compassionate and giving heart. The other thing I'd say is, if you can focus on this one moment that you're living right now, and don't worry about your phone, don't worry about what you're doing in the future or the past or anything, but put all your energy and focus into this moment. And then when it's time to do the next thing, you'll do the next thing. But put every ounce of energy, emotion, brain power into this moment. Then you can fulfill yourself best.
Wow, Leigh, this is it's so empowering, so inspiring, very compelling. I can't thank you enough for this time. Definitely, I'm going to be back in touch. I want to follow up with you and talk with you more. And I love the aura. I love the confidence. I love the leadership. I love the values and things that you stand for. And to me, I encourage everybody to go out there and be a better version of themselves and give to others and serve others just as you do with your daily actions. I'm a huge fan, as I said at the beginning of the show. I can't thank you enough for being a part of this hour with us. Hopefully we can have you come back, but I'm going to follow up soon with you here in the near future and pick your brain a little bit more, because it's just been a wonderful, wonderful hour, and I thank you so much, Leigh.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
Bring it in. Thank you for watching the Coach Scott Field Show, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. This DBNA television broadcast is a Roar Media production. Don't forget to subscribe to the Coach's YouTube channel. Like and follow him on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have yourself dressed and ready to go in the locker room for the next exciting show coming soon. Thank you for watching the Coach Scott Field Show, the nation's #1 digital coaches show. This DBNA television broadcast is a Roar Media production.